Hey?
How you doing? I got Jared on the line, too.
Okay.
Hey, Glenn.
How's it going?
Just dealing with the snow over here.
Yeah, we got hit with about a foot yesterday. It was 60 degrees, was it Wednesday? And then the next day we got a foot of snow.
Yeah, sounds like here. We have 22 below one day and 6 degrees above the next day. And then 14 below the day after. So it's like package of heat was wrapped up someplace around the North Pole and sent down by balloon or something. I don't know.
It's like, do you think they use that to justify, the
global climate change?
For their story?
If it's not being done on purpose, it's magic. I suspect they are able to control temperatures and weather patterns from the Indian Ocean. And they send up the water currents from volcanoes underwater that either push the heated water further north or holds it back. I don't know exactly how they would do it, but something like that has an effect on water, and water then has an effect on temperature, of course, evaporation and stuff. And where it falls or where it happens is too direct for me to believe it's always accidental or just nature. I don't think nature is this crazy.
What about on your property where, when you had all your thermometers?
We always felt here that there was a microclimate in this area. The only thing I couldn't know for sure is, did it extend beyond the farm to an area, say, the size of the county, or eastern Ontario, or what was it that was so different about here? Because they keep hearing weather forecasts, and they would come true until they got to a circle close to us, maybe 50 miles going west, and then it would kind of split and go down in the U.S. and above in northern Ontario, and we wouldn't get what they were talking about. But I bought a washing machine, compliments of one of the ladies, as a gift to Jennifer when she first came, and within a matter of months, it broke down because it had a magnetic lock on the door, and you couldn't open it. And I took a taxi to town in that period, and the taxi driver says, "That's funny, the same thing happened to me." And I spoke to Ian, who used to come here and cut wood and stuff like that, and he's a small appliance repairman. And he said, "Yeah, I know about that problem. It's regular. You have to constantly replace the mechanism." And the fact that my truck parked at the door always had trouble starting, and, a starter is a magnet. So how far it extends, I would suspect that the number of complaints filed with Ontario Hydro over the last, not this year because it's not over yet, but not last year because figures aren't out yet, but the year before, in 2015, they had a record number of complaints. The usual number of complaints for what they call Eastern Ontario had been 300 per year. And in that year of 2015, they got somewhere between 12 and 14,000. Now, what has happened in between 2010 and 2015 is they began to put in smart meters. Smart meters by themselves are not a problem. However, if you have an electrical circuit that sends electricity into the ground around it, a magnetic cloud rises, and one can't trust the readings, according to scientists at the University of Ottawa, on a different subject, of anything that is in a magnetic field. In my 6 thermometers, all within the range of about 70 to 85 feet, we got usually 5 or 6 different readings on the same type of thermometer, same brand. And in the first few weeks, I'd switch them from one place to another to see if the change that was occurring was with the thermometer or with the place in which it was located. And I found that it was both, that the thermometers would read differently at another of the 6 places. All of them would be changing from place to place, would read differently. So the question was, is it the place or is it the smart meter or the thermometer? And I settled the problem by putting a thermometer directly on the place where stood the hydro rod going into the ground. I put another one on the rod itself, which I had removed and put about 30 feet away. And I found that the stairs themselves that held the rod in place would be another place to test. So I took the top stair and I put it in one place, and I took the landing that used to be the stairwell going down, landing at the top, and I moved it to another place. And all those things had been in the same location together for 40-some years. And I found that temperature readings followed the pieces. No matter what it was, if it came from that place where the rod went into the ground, it would read strange figures compared to other places. What I determined over a period of time is that it seemed to be reading light as opposed to reading heat. And therefore, in the summer time, when the sun's out more, the difference in the readings was wider. In the winter time, with the sun only coming out portion of the time that it does in the summertime, because it's usually clouded in a manner that's going to send snow or freezing rain or whatever. And I came to the conclusion that there was a magnetic cloud around the pieces that came out of the ground where Hydro's rod is. And the difference in temperature in the winter between what was being said on the radio, battery-operated radio, and the temperatures outside in the winter is varying by about 7 degrees in those thermometers that are closest to the pieces. 7 degrees warmer. In the summertime, 25 to 35 degrees warmer is what thermometers could read. Certain times of the day, it's lighter. When our location, the sun comes out of hiding, basically, although it's been up for hours, it crosses the area where you don't get interference from trees and whatever at about 9 o'clock. And between 9 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon is when you got the biggest differences. Now, you could be standing in one place and look at the thermometer and it would say 20 degrees centigrade. Doesn't matter, you can transfer it to Fahrenheit. But 20 degrees centigrade is what they read in Canada, centigrade. And walk 10 feet, and it would read 50 degrees. Now, it didn't feel like you walked into a warmer place. And the only difference between the two places, and I have 6 possibilities in that 70 to 80 foot area in front of the garage leading to the gateway leading to the road. The minute the sun went behind a tree and cast a shadow, the temperature would fall by 20 degrees from 50 to 30. Now, because a tree creates a shadow, I could accept a minor difference in the temperature, but not that kind of change. And I came to conclude that it was the light that caused the rising of the thermometer, not the heat. Now, if you do that and you have calibrated a device to measure something in a lab, and then you put it to work in a place that has a magnetic field, the readings are not going to be the same. And if you take the meter off the wall and you send it to the lab, it'll read perfectly for the lab. But if you bring it back here, it won't read the same thing in 6 different places. A hydrometer monitors usage of electricity. And I started getting bills. Before they switched to the smart meter, my bills were between $120 to $240 a month, depending on what I did here. I started getting bills for thousands of dollars. I got a bill for $17,000, which they want me to pay. But they won't send anybody to investigate. And I said, it doesn't make sense. It's not even worth a discussion. You cannot go from $240,000 to $17,000 in a reasonable period of time, and certainly not in a few months or a year. Can't do it. And they won't send anybody. And the only people they call from collection services. And they want to make some deal, just, pay some amount or... No, this is a fraud. The question is, are you stupid enough at Hydro not to understand that you don't basically get that variance without something being wrong? Or are you stealing from the people of Ontario, especially Eastern Ontario? If there's 12,000 complaints when there used to be 300, there's got to be something going on. So what they did is they raised the price of Hydro to make it look like it had to do with the rising prices. So people all started complaining about rising prices when they should be complaining that they're paying Hydro amounts of money that don't make any sense. And they put Hydro up for sale. Then I understood. They want the people who buy the shares to find out what they've been doing after they've taken the money and left the country. Now, if it was only money, I would say they're a bunch of crooks, same as their ombudsman described them as basically thieves. But it's much more than money. It's what a magnetic field does to a human being living within that field. And what it does is cause clumping of glands, clumping of genetic material. And that leads to a number of changes in the body. Fat bottom ladies think it's something they eat. Men who take Viagra think it's something else. People who work on a cement floor that has no basement below it in a factory can't understand why they have sore knees. They don't realize that there's a different magnetic pull on the knee than there is on the shoulder, as with fat bottom ladies. A stroke is a clump. A heart attack is a clump. Mental illness is a clump. Whether you deal with electricity in water and the house or electricity as neurons within the body flowing around in water, there's no difference. Genocide is what is being done. And genocide would not have been discussed unless we were close to the end. They have to be planning what worries Donald Trump. They have to be planning a genocide in the U.S. Now, Donald Trump has all the information that a person with billions of dollars can have. But he has something much more than anybody else before. All presidents of the United States were moderately well off. Donald Trump is part of a small group called billionaires. And if a billionaire sitting at a table gets a briefing from the CIA and from the FBI and from all of the foreign affairs people around the world, he as an individual probably has more information than anyone ever had. He has it more than any one of the people who gave him the information because they only have their share. He has everybody's share. And you do that to a billionaire, and he sounds just like us. He sounds like it can't be. when people hear us talk about what's going on in the world, nah, I would have known. The media would tell me. Why do you think he calls media liars? Because he knows they know. At a certain level, maybe journalists don't know, but at a certain level in the media, and most of them are billionaires that own the media, they know. But they don't care. Does Donald Trump care? And other people don't care? Sounds that way. In any event, here I am testing what hell would be like if you really were talking about something real rather than the interpretation given in the Bible. Of course, when they talk about hell in the Bible, they say that your genetic material is useless to them in the future, and they're going to send it to be remanufactured at the center of the earth, where it's all fire and molten and pressure and everything, and you're going to disappear forever. If, on the other hand, your genetic material is good for them, they'll subdivide it into all its different categories. There might be a category called assholes. There might be a category called media assholes. There might be a category called politicians. But more than likely, there's a category called bureaucrats. Rats in the sense that when the earth was created, ants came first, rats came second, bats came third, cats came fourth, and finally mountain lions. Ants, rats, bats, cats, and mountain lions. What did they all have in common? They all started their lives living in a cave. That's where they escaped freezing rain, snow, wind, cold. And as soon as the rats appeared, the ants went underground, because the rats were going to do what the ants had done in the cave. And that didn't need the ants to explore caves anymore. The rats would handle that. And because rats can't jump across lakes underground, they had to grow some wings and became bats. And then they came back down on the other side, and they turned their wings into tails and legs and feet, and became cats. Ants, rats, bats, and cats. And cats found that there were openings to the caves that went outside. So a group of them went to explore outside, and some got bigger. But you have to believe that in those days, most of the animals were hermaphroditic. In other words, they were all female in appearance and could only clone themselves. You have to believe that, because if you look at plants, they've been through the same process. A male tree needs a female tree in order to have more seeds that grow more trees. But at the beginning, the first trees didn't have a male close by, so the only trees they could grow would be if they could replicate themselves on the same root, R-O-O-T. And of course, we know that the original trees grew together. And it took a long time before genders were divided. In trees, it took a long time when genders were divided in animals. And of course, human beings are just another species of animals, and it took a long time for that to happen in human beings. But it did. Males were basically a product of a female to handle day-to-day jobs, because the female was too busy running society. Males were always in that position until the last ice age. And then the hermaphroditic human beings that lived on the planet before the ice age, like ants, decided that they would go underground and let the males handle the work upstairs while they, hermaphrodites, would build a society below ground. Why would they do that? Why would they act like ants? Because they knew that unless they did something, not for their own lifetimes, but for the lifetime of their species, unless they did something, they were bound to die. And it would be all over because the sun was committing suicide. And once the sun has died, everything that it feeds dies with it. And unless someone had the ability to leave this place, they would disappear. Didn't know exactly how long it would take, but they knew it would disappear. Now they were entering an ice age, which they had lived as a species at least 3 times before, and said, okay, here's an opportunity. Why not make it appear as if men are in charge? And why not let women appear as their only task is to make babies, instead of us being obviously in charge? It'll look like men are in charge. And if you give them a long enough period of time, which, let's say, give or take 17,000, 18,000 years, they won't know we even existed. And the Ice Age happened to last 24,000 years. Coming out of the Ice Age, nothing happened for 8,000 years. The people who were placed here began to procreate. 4,000 years later, they invented religion. And they said that the one in charge of religion, who started it up, was a man. And the man couldn't trust the woman because she was evil. So they called the man Adam. If you replace the A's in Adam with E's and scramble the letters in the word, it's Medi, as in media, former capital of a state called Media in the area of the Middle East. And they called the woman Eve. Now, if you speak English and you know what the word Eve means, it doesn't mean a new beginning. It means an end and the beginning of something the next day. So the media, mostly males, always males until just recently, always billionaires until just recently, ran the show. 2 brothers, one called Cain the builder and the other one called Abel, were involved in a dispute on how to best do what they had to do, and they decided that one would go into hiding and would appear to have nothing to do with the day-to-day activity, but would become honorable. Honorable. He didn't die, he just went and hid. And who's called honorable? Well, the honorable members of Parliament, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. I knew that when I was a kid because I was born just a few blocks away from Parliament Hill, and in those days they didn't have the security they have now because we hadn't reached this period in time. And I used to walk around inside that building and read the names on the door, the Honorable so-and-so, the Honorable so-and-so. But they only would give power to men and only limit women to having babies until such time as they had answered all of the questions that a laboratory could answer over a period of time, somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 years, because you would have a population at that time of somewhere around 7 or 8 billion people who had lived and died since the Ice Age, and 7 or 8 billion people who lived on that day 6,000 to 8,000 years after the creation of genders for the purpose of control, and wars began. In any event, here we are. Science has brought us the answers they need, many more answers than they'll share with us, always making any announcement of something that we need to move their progress further and keeping everything else silent, just like the media. I used to go to the Ottawa Citizen, and I watched how newspapers operate. And what they do is they receive letters from citizens, and they stack them up. And any of the letters that they feel would advance their cause, they print. And sometimes advancing the cause is taking a step backwards before you take 3 steps forward. It's like foxtrot. In the same way as going to court and you come out the winner only to discover that they have 3 levels of appeal court who will then reverse the decisions that were made or enhance the judgment, as they did yesterday in San Francisco. 3 judges who made a decision that, in fact, they, the courts and the media, run the show, not the president. He, after all, was elected by the people, and that's not the person allowed to run the show. Only those people, the builders and the honorable, run the show. So now it comes down to, okay, what does Trump do today? He's supposed to make an announcement, I think, this afternoon about what their next step will be. But unless somebody starts talking about what I've just talked about in public and fills in the people's understanding to the point where they then have overstanding, until that happens, the people can't believe that they haven't been told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me, this code book that's placed right in front of me that they tell me I must obey, and yet they don't seem to follow, whether they're policemen or judges or lawyers or whatever. Oaths are for us, the people. because they know when they take the Bible, like Jimmy Carter would walk around with the Bible, that he's walking around with the code book. Same reason this code book was put in all hotel rooms, because the team of people, probably made up of 12, 13 to 30 different groups, some of which are made to fight the other group, like Arabs and Israelis. Some people believe that you can't make a human being with the qualities you want prior to birth and retrieve those qualities post-mortem and use them again. Most people don't believe that's possible because nobody ever told them in public that it's possible in a manner in which they would say, well, if the media says it is, or if the Senate says it is. How can they? When the cell told me the information that I needed to have to tie the pieces together, they said, because of who you are and how you act, we've chosen you to carry the message. Because you can put yourself into other people's shoes and think like they do. They also were very certain about the fact that I would do what I believe needed to be done because of my tenacity. And they told me, we're not going to, for the time being, or have we ever before, told anyone else what we're telling you. And what we want you to do is find the right woman to work with you, because what we need is a sanctuary for cats. For a new beginning, you must develop a sanctuary for cats, and you got to find the right woman to work with. Because we are all men in the cell today, and the time has come to grab a woman before there's none left, because they're all being genetically modified into women. We men, little guys, will live inside of them and become their husband for all intents and purposes, and will help them procreate as hermaphrodites. So if anybody tells you they know, they're lying. So don't get pissed off at them because they don't know. And they need to be told by someone who's not afraid to die because he's lived over and over again. And when I asked them about Jennifer, they said yes. Jennifer and I are probably the most opposite personalities you can find. She's a negative person, and I'm a positive person, and the people that we have to bring on board cannot be brought on board. They must come on board. And when they come on board, they will find out from me and from Jennifer that there is a plan afoot to destroy most of the world, that there is a plan on foot to destroy the United States of America, which does not involve war but can be blamed on God. And they said, when you're ready to go, let us know, because we want to build an education complex to teach as many people who want what occurred, what is, and what will be before it happens. And we want to build it on a space 448 square feet and most of it will be underground, 223 feet down, where some of the ants will come and do the teaching. Ants in the sense of the first human beings who planned this. So there we are, my friends. I asked of them, for your benefit, I'll repeat this part, who will finance this project? And they said it takes 100 millionaires prepared to share with the future $10 million. That'll make $1 billion, I think, if my math is correct. That amount of money deposited in a number of bank accounts will earn interest, and we don't collect interest. And therefore, it would be available to pay money to certain people. I am getting a phone call. I got to answer it. I'll talk to you again. Bye.
All right, Glenn.